Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. It's time for another Ask a Crafter. Yes, I'm in the same shirt because I've been like batch filming, in case you're wondering. This first question comes from Just a Cat Who Can Type. That is a talented cat. Is there a way to bring old hog bristle brushes back into shape? They are not completely erect, but they have bristles sticking out to all sides, which is very annoying. I do not buy new animal hair brushes, so I want to make the most out of the ones that I have, and I want to fix them as good as possible. Yes, there's a couple different things you can do. I have had really good luck with Murphy's oil soap. Just kind of put some in a little, like a mason jar, like a spaghetti sauce jar or something, and put the brushes bristle side down, and that will get in there, and that will break down a lot of the oil paint. Another product that's really good, especially if you've got acrylic paint stuck in there, would be Mr. Clean. I use Mr. Clean floor cleaner for cleaning out my screen print, like my screen printing screen, after I've been using it with acrylic paints or screen printing inks, because it would really get in there and break down that acrylic. So those two products work really well. You can find them at your grocery store or department store, and I'd let them soak overnight and then see how you're at. Then wash them really good. And if you've still got hair sticking out here and there, I would boil some water in a pan, take the pan off the heat and dip the brushes in. Hold them like, I would hold them for like a minute, just suspended in the water. And then you might want to put gloves on or something to protect your hands, but then I would just kind of try to mold them into shape a little bit. Now you can put some soap like on your hands or on your glove. You could kind of sculpt them together, sculpt the bristles down with some bar soap and let them dry like that. Then the next time you wash the brushes, they should work pretty well. You can do this for synthetic brushes too, but when you dip it in the boiling water, only for a few seconds, okay? Because that could melt the plastic a little too much, but that will help make it pliable and you can shape it back into shape. Just don't burn yourself, don't burn your hands off, be careful, take care, not a thing for kids to do, but you should be able to bring them back to get a little bit more life out of them. Also, the Masters Brush Cleaner and Restorer is really good for getting dried oil paint out of your brushes. And there's also there was a Grumbacher brush cleaner bar that was really good too. So there are some products you should be able to get those brushes back a bit better anyway. And let's see, Cynthia asks, is there a big difference between Neenah Classic Crest cardstock and Neenah Exact Index cardstock for coloring with alcohol markers? Yes, there's not only is the price a big difference. So Neenah Classic Crest runs about $40 for a 125 sheet ream or 250 sheet. I think it's a 250 sheet ream is about $40 of the Neenah Classic Crest, which is what I use for alcohol marker coloring. The Neenah Exact Index is about $11 for 250 sheets. The Exact Index is much thinner. Even though the weight says the same, the way we measure paper in America is pretty funny. The poundage is not standardized. It goes by what the parent sheet of the paper is. So they're saying this paper is 110 pounds. That means that 500 sheets of the full size of that paper, the parent sheet would be 500 pounds. But you don't know if that parent sheet is 22 by 30 inches or if it's 15 by 30 inches or what it is. You don't know what that parent sheet size, so that poundage really does not give you much information. Grams per square meter, or GSM, is a better way to tell how your paper holds up. So like watercolor paper, our standard watercolor paper is about 300 grams per square inch. So that's grams per square meter, I mean. So that's a better way of telling how thick your paper is by going by the grams per square meter. But not only is the Exact Index not as thick as the Classic Crest, it's also not sized like the Classic Crest. So you're not going to get those seamless blends. You're not going to get that beautiful coloring. I don't know smoothness wise if it's as smooth as the Classic Crest, but Classic Crest is very smooth. One of the best dupes I found for Classic Crest is Accent Opaque. It's great for stamping and ink blending, but I do feel it falls short for the alcohol coloring. So I did buy a ream of that just to check it out to see if it would be a budget alternative. And it will get the job done, but it's not as easy to blend on it as the Neenah Classic Crest, although it is quite a bit cheaper. So I'd say if you can't afford the Neenah Classic Crest, I think I'd probably suggest getting a pad of Bristle paper, because it's a little more bleedy, but it works great for alcohol inks, works even good for watercolor and water-based markers. So it's a nice all-around card that you can use in your crafting for card making. So Yeah, the index is just, I honestly, I would say don't waste your money on the index because it's not going to be stiff enough for card bases, even if it doesn't work out for your coloring. I would go with the Classic Crest or the Accent Opaque. Let's see. Sharon Peters asks, I'm a newbie to watercoloring and absolutely love it. I enjoy your watercolor videos where you do a painting and I can follow along. My question, when you do videos with oils or acrylics and things that I'd like to try like flowers, birds, or nature scenes, what do I need to do since I'm using watercolors? All right, so she wants to convert a painting to watercolors. That's a little tricky because when you're using acrylics or oils, you are working with an opaque media that you can layer up. Now, yes, I know there are some oil paints, pigments that are transparent, but you're still layering up and building up and mixing with white. So you're doing a lot of things you're just not going to be doing with watercolors. So translating that is going to be difficult. I think you might be better off to actually just find the reference photo if I'm using a reference photo and just use the skills that you've built from doing watercolor tutorials to tackle that subject on its own, because it's not the same method of practice. It's not the same steps. I think it would be more confusing than helpful at all to watch a tutorial for acrylics or oils and try to transcribe it to watercolor. Mary Youngblood asks, I am a new stamper and card maker. How do I know which inks to choose for which coloring tool? So confusing. You can usually use, well, actually, I'm not sure if she's asking about inks for like blending tools or inks for like different markers. Mary, I did a video called, I think it was like ink pad comparison. It was very recent because I did an update to kind of bring in a bunch of different types of inks that weren't in my original one. I think it was like January. I'll try to remember to link it, but chances are I might get confused because I have a lot of videos from this batch that I'll be uploading, so I might miss it. But if you go to my channel and search ink pads and look for the video I posted just a couple months ago, there's a big comparison there, and I show you what markers to use with what inks will work with both, what inks will work with one but not the other, and I show you with alcohol markers, watercolors, watercolor markers, that sort of thing, so you'll know what each type of ink pad is best suited for and which ones can do double duty. So please check out that video because it's a lot of information that I can't really, it makes more sense when you can see it too, rather than me just talking to you. And it's a lot of information to cover. It's a little more complex than I can tackle in this video. So I think that would help you. And MK Mouse asks, what are your thoughts on Winsor Newton watercolors? Now, I think Winsor Newton watercolors are lovely. They're definitely a safe bet. If you're looking for paints, they're probably the most famous watercolors in the world. They definitely, I would say, well, I don't know if they are in America. They used to be. I think Daniel Smith is probably a little more famous right now, but they're good. There's a few colors I'm not too keen on with them. For instance, I don't like their burnt sienna. They use PR 101 and it's a very orangey, weak burnt sienna. And their earth tones in general I don't find are the most robust. And also their sap green is a little too springy, and their olive green is better. Their olive green is more like other companies' sap green. But other than that, I really like them. And those two nitpicky things, I would just say go with burnt umber instead of burnt sienna if you're going to be using a brown. And I mean, you could be safe picking out pretty much any of the Winsor Newton colors. Other than that, just grab like a burnt sienna from any other company. For some reason, I don't know why the burnt sienna is so lackluster, but the earth tones just in general feel a little weak to me. But they're great paints, so you can't go wrong. I bought a set of 24 for like half pans. I think it was around $88 a few years ago. I'm very pleased with that purchase. Yeah, they're good paints. I mean, I think most things from Winsor & Newton are pretty top notch. Angela Shock asks, are all watercolors chalky or is it just the cheap ones? Can you recommend some that are as cheap but not chalky? There are, yeah, I guess she's using them on die cuts. Oh, interesting. Yes, I totally can. For budget watercolors that are not chalky, I would say any of the fan type palettes, the palettes that fold or the blades with watercolor and the fan out, those are really good paints actually. Also the Pretty Excellent paint by Milang, I believe is how you pronounce it. Those are on Amazon. The Maya watercolors, the Rhombus palette, looks like diamond shaped pans. That's a good palette. Those are all in the $20 or under range. The fan palettes, actually, you can get those. I've even seen them at Walmart for like $10, but they're all coming out of the same factory. They're good paints and they're not chalky at all. They're gorgeous and they're super, super affordable. And oh my gosh, we're gonna wrap up this batch of questions. Lisa T asks, is drawing something that can be taught or is it strictly innate? Drawing absolutely can be taught. It just takes practice, just like any skill that you want to build. You can learn it. It takes practice, just like everything. I think some people use the excuse that you have to be born with a talent so they don't even try, but that is absolutely not it. Anybody can learn it. It is a skill. It's a skill like welding. It's a skill like driving. It's a skill like knitting. It's a skill like anything else. You need to foster it. You need to practice. And Michael Hardy asks, Lindsay, I like your tutorials and knowledge about paint, so I'd like to ask a question for Ask a Crafter. What are good, inexpensive brands for those who are transitioning from student grade to artist grade watercolor paints? Most people who make videos on this come from an attitude of brand loyalty or snobbery, so I'd rather ask somebody with a plethora of experience. Thanks for your videos. Yeah, so if you've been using student grade paint and you want to get something a little bit nicer, but maybe you're not ready to splurge for the top of the line watercolor paints, there are some really decent artist grade paints that are just kind of maybe just a notch below the more like pricier brands, but are very, very good. White Knights would be one of my picks, and it's the same paint as Yarka St. Petersburg, but Yarka is quite expensive in America. It's the same exact paint. It's just the Yarka brand. They are marketed through Jack Richardson to the American market, and White Knights are sold in Europe, and they often show up on Amazon. And there's also independent sellers on like Etsy that sell White Knights. I would go with White Knights. You can, and the price fluctuates so much. So what I would consider a good price for White Knights, now I'm gonna tip this down again so I'm not sitting on my feet anymore. I would say if you can get like a 24 to 36 set of White Knights for around $40, $45, that would be a great buy. Even a 12 set of White Knights would be a good buy, and those I think usually go for around $25. So that would be a nice artist grade paint that's just kind of a notch below, say like M. Graham or Daniel Smith or Winsor & Newton. Actually, I kind of like them better than Winsor & Newton, quite frankly, but they're both good paints, don't get me wrong. But that's definitely a great buy. Let's see, what's another good one? Da Vinci, which is an American company. They're like a steal, and I used to use their paints a lot when I taught because you could get 37 milliliter tubes of paint for like, it was about the same price as you would pay for like a 5 to 15 milliliter tube from like Sennelier or Daniel Smith. And now they sell smaller tubes, which is really economical for people. So Da Vinci, if you're going by the tube, they're a great option. I think they have some pan sets, because I know Denise Snowden from In Liquid Color, I hope I said her last name right, she had a custom palette made for them that I think you can buy on their shop. That's a really nice set of colors too. I don't know how affordable it would be compared to other artist grade paints. I think it's comparable, but it might not be that step between student and artist in price. Renaissance out of Poland, I find that to be a really nice artist grade paint that's much cheaper than other artist grade paints. And my friend owns an Etsy shop. Her name, and I'm not recommending it because she's my friend. She didn't become my friend till after I was using the paints. But April from the shop, A Little Creative, sells the Renaissance brand, and she has a set of paints. They're 24 half pans, and that's a nice one to start with if you want to try a set. But she also has the tubes, and they're 15 milliliter tubes, and I'm thinking they range between like $6 and $8 a tube, and that's a pretty good size tube. But I think I would recommend getting the half pan sets just because you can get a lot more for less, I think, because it takes a while to use up watercolor, and if you're kind of in that middle range between student and pro, it would probably be a more appropriate amount, I think. I'm trying to think if there's any other good ones. The student grade Van Gogh watercolor tubes are excellent. I haven't tried their pans, but their tubes are excellent, and I'm thinking they're around $3 a tube, maybe even less on sites like Blick and Jerry's Artorama. They're an excellent option. Stay away from their burnt sienna. Their burnt sienna is a weird mix. Go for Cotman. Actually, go for Da Vinci burnt sienna. That's the last one I bought. I'm really happy with that one. Or Sennelier. No, actually, I don't like Sennelier's earth tones that much. Winsor & Newton and Sennelier are very similar in their earth tones, I've realized. But anyway, just Van Gogh, every color except for, and you don't need every color, but just avoid the burnt sienna. It's nothing to write home about. And that's a cheap color to buy, so you shouldn't have a problem finding an alternative on a budget. Let's see. And if you want, well, you said you didn't want student grade. So I think, you know, honestly, White Knights would be my top pick. And those should be pretty widely available in America and and in Europe. If prices are high on Amazon, go to Etsy and search Etsy. There was a place called Pro Art Supplies on Etsy that has a really good selection, and they even have open stock, like individual pans if you just want to buy a few pans and try them out. But yeah, that would be my pick. They're a really nice, really good company. And I think that wraps it up for this batch of Ask a Crafter questions. I want to thank everyone who submitted questions. If you didn't hear yours on this one, if questions were duplicated, like I answered one about mounting rubber stamps, I do have a video on that, but a couple people had asked a question about, actually I think several people had asked a question about mounting and unmounting rubber stamps, but I have full videos on that. So it's something it's better to watch than to listen to somebody talk about. So hopefully over one of these videos your question was answered. I think this last batch I answered them all that were actual questions that weren't duplicates. So so I hope that everyone's happy with that. I hope you've been enjoying the series. Thank you so much for watching. Please give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And until next time, happy crafting. Bye.